Wyoming Territory, September 1879. 7-year-old Emily McAllister pressed her nose against the kitchen window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the dusty road that led to their ranch. Her small hands gripped the wooden chair she stood on, knuckles white with anticipation. "Papa's bringing home a lady today," she whispered to herself. "But she don't know I picked her special." 3 days earlier, Emily had hidden behind flour barrels in Henderson's general store, listening as her father interviewed women for a cooking position. 5 ladies had come forward, each desperate for work in the harsh Wyoming Territory. Emily watched them all with the sharp eyes of a child who had learned to read grown-ups quickly since her mama died 2 years ago. The first woman barely looked at Emily, talking only to Papa about wages and duties. The second kept glancing toward the door like she wanted to escape. The third seemed nice enough, but when little Tommy Henderson ran through the store crying, she'd stepped back with annoyance written clear across her face. But then Julie Beth Coleman walked in. She was young, maybe 24, with kind brown eyes and hair the color of autumn wheat, pulled back neat and proper. When Papa started explaining the job, Julie nodded politely. But then something magical happened. Emily had dropped her rag doll, and it rolled out from behind the flour barrels. While Papa kept talking about cooking and cleaning, Julie bent down, picked up the doll, and looked right at Emily with the warmest smile she'd ever seen. "Is this your little one?" Julie had asked Papa, but her eyes stayed on Emily. "She's got your Papa's strong jaw, but those eyes are all her own. Beautiful." That night, Emily had knelt by her bed and prayed harder than she'd ever prayed before. "Jesus," she whispered, "I told you I needed a mama, not just someone who cooks. I think you sent me Julie. Please make Papa pick her. Please make her stay. Please make her love me back." She'd crawled into bed with a peace in her heart she hadn't felt since Mama went to heaven. Now, watching the road, Emily's heart hammered like a woodpecker on the old oak tree. She'd spent the morning cleaning the guest room until it sparkled, picking wildflowers for the washstand, and even putting her second-best hair ribbon on the pillow. "It's going to be her room," Emily had announced to their old barn cat, Whiskers. "She just don't know it yet." The sound of hoofbeats made Emily's stomach flip with excitement. There, coming up the road, was Papa's big brown horse with 2 riders. Emily could see her father's broad shoulders and weathered hat, and behind him, holding tight to his waist, was a woman in a simple blue dress. Emily's heart soared. He'd chosen Julie. Jesus had answered her prayer. James McAllister helped Julie down from the horse, his calloused hands gentle as he steadied her. Emily watched through the window as they talked on the porch, Papa's voice deep and serious as he explained the job duties. Julie nodded, smoothing her skirts and looking around at the ranch with what Emily hoped was approval. They were too far away for Emily to hear the words, but she could see Julie's posture straighten with determination. This was a woman who wasn't afraid of hard work. Emily scrambled down from her chair and ran to the door, throwing it open just as Papa and Julie reached the porch steps. "Papa," she called, launching herself into his arms. James caught her easily, his weathered face breaking into the first real smile Emily had seen in days. "Emily, sweetheart, I want you to meet Miss Julie Coleman," James said, setting Emily down but keeping a protective hand on her shoulder. "She's going to be our new cook." Emily looked up at Julie, taking in her kind eyes and the way she smiled down at her. Without hesitation, Emily stepped forward and grabbed Julie's hand. "I'm Emily. Welcome home, Mama." The silence that followed was loud enough to hear a pin drop. James's face went red as a summer tomato. "Emily, no, honey. Miss Julie is here to cook for us." "She's not. We're not." He stumbled over his words, clearly mortified. But Julie didn't pull her hand away. Instead, she knelt down until she was eye level with Emily, her expression serious but gentle. "Emily, that's a beautiful name. And thank you for the warm welcome. But your Papa hired me to cook and help around the house. That's my job." Emily's chin lifted stubbornly, just like her mother's used to do. "Jobs can change," she said matter-of-factly. "Besides, I prayed for you special. Jesus sent you here for me, not just for cooking. James cleared his throat loudly. Emily, that's enough. Go wash up for supper while I show Miss Julie around. His voice carried that tone that usually made Emily obey immediately. But today was different. Today was the day her prayers were answered. Emily squeezed Julie's hand tighter. Come see your room first. I made it pretty for you. It's got the best view of the mountains, and I put flowers by the window, and there's a soft quilt that Mama made before she went to heaven. Julie's eyes softened at the mention of Emily's mother. She looked up at James, who was shaking his head in embarrassment. I'm sorry, Miss Julie. She's been excited about getting help around here, but I'm afraid she's gotten some ideas in her head that aren't appropriate. It's all right, Julie said softly, standing up but not letting go of Emily's hand. She's just being welcoming. She looked down at Emily again. I'd love to see the room, sweetheart, but you understand that I'm here to work for your papa, right? To cook meals and help with chores. Emily nodded solemnly. Mamas do that too, she pointed out with perfect 7-year-old logic. Mama used to cook all our meals and help with everything. So really, we're going to do Mama work anyway. She tugged on Julie's hand. Come on, I'll show you where everything is. You're going to love it here. Papa's real nice, even when he gets that worry line between his eyes like now. And I can help you with everything. I know how to set the table and feed the chickens and everything. As Emily led Julie toward the house, chattering away about daily routines and pointing out important things like where the best apple tree grew and which chickens laid the most eggs, James followed behind in stunned silence. He'd hired a cook to make life easier, to help with the domestic duties he struggled with as a single father. He hadn't counted on his daughter's matchmaking ambitions. But as he watched Julie listen patiently to Emily's chatter, saw the way she smiled at his daughter's enthusiastic explanations, something warm unfurled in his chest. For 2 years, Emily had been quiet, withdrawn, speaking only when necessary. She did her chores and minded her manners, but the spark that had made her so much like her mother had dimmed when they lost Mary. Now, holding Julie's hand and practically bouncing with excitement, Emily was more animated than she'd been since the funeral. Maybe hiring Julie Coleman would bring more changes to their household than he'd bargained for. The thought should have worried him. Instead, as Emily pulled Julie through the front door announcing, "Come see your room. I made it pretty for you," James found himself hoping his daughter's prayers might just be wiser than his practical plans. The next morning, Julie woke before dawn, determined to prove her worth as a cook and nothing more. She'd spent a restless night in the beautiful room Emily had prepared, touched by the wildflowers and the carefully arranged quilt, but firm in her resolve to maintain proper boundaries. She was here for employment, not to fulfill a lonely child's fantasies about finding a new mother. She dressed quickly in her work dress and made her way to the kitchen, planning to have breakfast ready before the family stirred. But as she lit the stove, small footsteps padded down the stairs. Emily appeared in her nightgown, hair tousled from sleep, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Mama Julie," Emily said cheerfully, climbing onto a chair at the kitchen table as if this was their established routine. "Good morning, Emily," Julie replied gently but firmly. "But remember, I'm Miss Julie, not Mama. I'm here to cook for you and your papa. That's all." Emily tilted her head, considering this with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could muster. "But you're doing Mama things. Mama used to make breakfast early so Papa wouldn't be late with the cattle. You're making breakfast early too." Julie couldn't argue with that logic, so she focused on mixing biscuit dough instead. "Would you like to help me set the table?" she asked, hoping to redirect the conversation. "Mama used to let me help cook," Emily said hopefully. "I know how to crack eggs without getting shells in them." Mostly. Before Julie could respond, James appeared in the doorway, his hair still damp from washing at the basin. He took in the scene. Julie at the stove, Emily chattering happily at the table, and something flickered across his face that Julie couldn't quite read. "Emily, you shouldn't be bothering Miss Julie while she works." James said, though his tone was gentle. "She's not bothering me," Julie said quickly. "I don't mind the company." Emily beamed. "See, Papa? She likes having me around, just like a mama would." James's jaw tightened slightly. "Emily, we talked about this. Miss Julie has a job to do. She's not here to be your mama." But Emily had already hopped down from her chair and was dragging a small stool over to the stove. "I can help with the cooking job," she announced. "Then it's not mama work, it's just help her work." Julie found herself smiling despite her intentions to stay detached. The child's logic was undeniable, and her eagerness was infectious. "Well, I suppose an extra pair of hands couldn't hurt," she said, catching James's warning look. "But only if your papa says it's all right." James studied them both, his expression conflicted. Finally, he nodded. "Just don't get in Miss Julie's way, sweetheart." As Julie guided Emily's small hands in kneading biscuit dough, she couldn't help but notice how the child soaked up every word of instruction. Emily hadn't just been boasting. She really did know her way around a kitchen for someone so young. "Your mama taught you well," Julie murmured. "She said cooking was how ladies take care of their families," Emily replied, concentrating hard on her kneading. "She said food made with love tastes better than food made with just hands." The simple wisdom made Julie's throat tight. She glanced up to find James watching them from the table, his coffee cup forgotten in his hands. Their eyes met for a moment, and something passed between them, a recognition of the motherless child's desperate hunger for feminine guidance. When they sat down to eat, Emily insisted on saying grace, her small voice earnest as she thanked Jesus for bringing Miss Julie to take care of us. James shifted uncomfortably, but didn't correct her phrasing. The biscuits were golden and flaky, the eggs perfectly cooked, and the bacon crispy without being burnt. James ate with obvious appreciation, complimenting Julie's cooking skill. "This is the best breakfast we've had in 2 years," he admitted. Emily nodded enthusiastically. "It tastes like love, just like Mama said it should." Julie felt her carefully constructed professional walls beginning to crack. This child had been without a mother's care for 2 years, and James had been struggling alone to fill both parental roles. No wonder Emily was so eager to claim her as family. After breakfast, as Julie began cleaning up, Emily refused to leave her side. She dried dishes, chattering constantly about everything from the names of the chickens to which wildflowers grew best by the creek. For the first time since her mother's death, Emily's voice filled the house with life and laughter. James found excuses to linger in the kitchen, ostensibly checking on ranch business, but clearly listening to his daughter's animated conversations with Julie. Several times, Julie caught him watching them with an expression of wonder, as if he couldn't believe how much Emily was talking. "She hasn't been this talkative since Mary died," he confided to Julie when Emily ran outside to feed the chickens. "She used to chatter constantly, just like this. I was starting to worry I'd never hear her laugh again." Julie's heart ached for this father and daughter who had both been drowning in quiet grief. "She just needed someone to listen," she said softly. "Someone female," James corrected. "She needed a woman's influence. I've done my best, but there are things." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I reckon what I'm trying to say is maybe you being here will help her heal." That afternoon, as Julie prepared supper, Emily sat at the kitchen table working on her letters. Every few minutes, she would look up and ask Julie a question about cooking, about her life before coming to the ranch, about whether she'd ever wanted children of her own. "I always hoped for a family someday," Julie answered honestly, her hands busy peeling potatoes. Emily's face lit up. "Well, you got one now. Me and Pop are your family, even if Pop is too stubborn to see it yet." Julie couldn't help but laugh at the child's directness. But as the sun began to set and she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching the house, her laughter died in her throat. Through the window, she saw a rider she recognized with dread. Emily noticed her sudden stillness. "What's wrong, Miss Julie? You look scared." Before Julie could answer, A harsh voice called out from the yard. "I know Julie Coleman is in there. She belongs to me." Emily's eyes went wide with fear, not understanding the words, but recognizing the threat in the man's tone. She instinctively moved closer to Julie, her small hand reaching for the woman's skirt. Julie's face had gone pale, but she placed a protective hand on Emily's shoulder. The job she thought would be simple cooking and cleaning had just become something far more complicated and dangerous. Julie's blood turned to ice water in her veins as Marcus Webb's voice cut through the evening air like a blade. She prayed she'd never hear that voice again, hoped that fleeing Kansas in the dead of night would be enough to escape the man her father had promised her to in marriage. But Marcus Webb was not a man who accepted being denied what he believed was rightfully his. Emily pressed closer to Julie's side, her small body trembling. "Who is that man? Why does he sound so angry?" Before Julie could answer, the front door burst open and James strode in, his face dark with concern. He'd obviously heard the commotion from the barn where he'd been tending the horses. His eyes immediately found Julie's terrified face, then dropped to Emily clinging to her skirts. "Julie, who is that man?" James demanded, his voice low but urgent. "Marcus Webb," Julie whispered, her hands shaking as she pulled Emily behind her. He was supposed to be my husband. My father arranged it before he died. But Marcus is cruel, and when I tried to break the engagement, he said I had no choice. He said he owned me." The front door slammed open again, and Marcus Webb filled the doorway like a storm cloud. He was a big man, thick through the chest and shoulders, with cold gray eyes and a mouth that seemed made for sneering. Those eyes swept the room until they found Julie, and his face twisted into a satisfied smile. "There you are, Julie darling," Marcus said, his voice dripping false sweetness. "You've led me quite a chase. But the game's over now. Time to come home and fulfill your obligations." Emily stepped out from behind Julie, her 7-year-old chin raised defiantly. "She is home. This is her home with me and Papa. You can't have her." Marcus laughed, a harsh sound that made Emily flinch. "And who might you be, little girl?" "Julie's bastard." The insult hit Emily like a slap, but before she could respond, James stepped forward, placing himself between Marcus and his daughter. "That's enough," James said, his voice deadly quiet. "You'll watch your tongue around my daughter, or you'll find yourself eating dirt." "Your daughter?" Marcus looked between James and Julie, his expression shifting to understanding. "Ah, I see. Julie's been playing house with the cowboy and his brat. Well, that ends now. Julie Coleman belongs to me, legal and proper. We're engaged to be married." "I broke that engagement," Julie said, finding her voice though it trembled. "I told you I wouldn't marry you, Marcus. I told you what you did to me was wrong." Marcus's face darkened. "What I did? I tried to claim my rights as your intended husband. Your father promised you to me, and by God, I'll have what I was promised." Emily looked up at Julie with wide, confused eyes. "What does he mean, Miss Julie? What did he do to you?" Julie's face crumpled, and she knelt down to Emily's level, her hands gentle on the child's shoulders. "He hurt me, sweetheart. He tried to hurt me in ways that weren't right, and that's why I had to run away." The admission hung in the air like smoke from a fire, and James felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He'd suspected as much from Julie's frightened reaction, but hearing it confirmed made his hands curl into fists. "You son of a—" James started, but caught himself before finishing the curse in front of Emily. Instead, he stepped toward Marcus, his intentions clear. Marcus pulled back his coat to reveal a pistol at his hip. "I wouldn't if I were you, cowboy. I've got legal papers giving me the right to take Julie back to Kansas. She's my intended bride, and she'll honor that commitment. Over my dead body," James said without hesitation, his own hand moving to the gun at his side. "That can be arranged," Marcus sneered. Emily had heard enough. The child who had been quiet and withdrawn for 2 years suddenly found her voice in a way that surprised everyone in the room. "And oh," she shouted, stepping in front of Julie with her arms spread wide. "She's our mama now. She belongs to US. She makes breakfast with love and helps me with my letters and tucks me in at night. You're mean and scary and you can't have her." Marcus stared at the small girl blocking his path to Julie, clearly unsure how to handle a child's fierce protection. "Get out of my way, girl. This doesn't concern you." "It does too concern me," Emily shot back. "She's my mama, not yours. Mine." Julie's heart broke and soared at the same time. This brave little girl was willing to stand up to a dangerous man to protect her. "Emily, sweetheart, get behind me." "No," Emily said firmly. "I prayed for Jesus to send me a mama, and he sent you. That means you're supposed to be here, not with that mean man." James felt pride and terror war in his chest as he watched his daughter stand her ground against a man twice his size. But Emily's courage gave him clarity. This child had claimed Julie as her mother with the absolute certainty that only comes from a pure heart. And Julie had just admitted she'd been hurt by this man, violated in some way that had forced her to flee her home. "You hurt my daughter," James said, his voice steady as granite. "Julie stays here, with us, with her family." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Family? You've known this woman for what, a day? 2 days? And you think you can steal what belongs to me?" "Nobody belongs to you," Julie said, standing up and placing her hands protectively on Emily's shoulders. "I'm a free woman, and I choose to stay here." "We'll see about that," Marcus snarled. "I'll be back with the sheriff and those legal papers. Enjoy your little game while you can, because it's about to end." He stormed toward the door, then turned back with a cruel smile. "And Julie, when I come back, you better be ready to come quietly, because if you force me to make a scene, I might not be particular about who gets hurt in the process." The threat was clear as he looked pointedly at Emily. Then Marcus Webb was gone, slamming the door behind him so hard the whole cabin shook. In the sudden quiet, Emily turned to Julie with tears streaming down her face. "He can't take you away, can he? You won't leave me like Mama did." Julie dropped to her knees and pulled Emily into her arms, holding the child tight against her chest. "I won't leave you, baby. I promise I won't leave you." Over Emily's head, her eyes met James's. In them, she saw a fierce determination that matched her own. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As a family. 3 days passed without any sign of Marcus Webb, and life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. But it was different now, deeper, more connected. The threat had changed something fundamental between James, Julie, and Emily. They were no longer employer, employee, and child. They had become something else entirely, though none of them had quite found the words for it yet. Emily refused to let Julie out of her sight for more than a few minutes. She helped with every meal, followed Julie to the chicken coop, and insisted on sleeping in the main room, just in case the mean man comes back. James didn't argue. He'd moved his own bedroll to the front room too, claiming he needed to keep watch. But Julie caught him watching her and Emily with an expression she couldn't quite read. Tender, protective, and something that made her heart flutter. "Papa," Emily announced over breakfast on the 4th morning, "you should tell Miss Julie she's pretty." James nearly choked on his coffee, while Julie felt her cheeks burn red. "Emily, that's not appropriate. Why not?" Emily asked with perfect innocence. "You told Mama she was pretty all the time." "I remember. And Miss Julie is pretty too. She's got nice eyes and her hair shines in the sunlight, and she smells like sunshine and bread." Julie couldn't help but smile at the child's description. "Thank you, sweetheart. That's very kind." "It's true," James said quietly, his eyes meeting Julie's across the table. "You are pretty. Beautiful, actually." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities, until Emily clapped her hands together with delight. "See? Now you should hold her hand like husbands and wives do." "Emily." Julie laughed, but she didn't look away from James. That evening, the traveling preacher stopped by on his monthly circuit through the territory. Reverend Morrison was a kind man in his 60s who had known Mary before she died and always made time to check on James and Emily. But tonight, His eyebrows rose when he saw Julie helping Emily with her letters while James mended harnesses nearby. "And who might this lovely young lady be?" the preacher asked. "This is Miss Julie," Emily announced proudly. "She's our cook, but really she's going to be my new mama. She just doesn't know it yet." Julie flushed with embarrassment, but Reverend Morrison chuckled. "Is that so? And what does your papa think about Emily's plans?" James looked up from his work, his eyes finding Julie's. "I think Emily might be wiser than the rest of us," he admitted. Later, after the preacher had blessed their meal and continued on his way, Julie tucked Emily into her makeshift bed in the main room. The child grabbed Julie's hand as she started to pull away. "Miss Julie, are you going to marry Papa?" Julie's breath caught. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because he looks at you the same way he used to look at Mama. All soft and happy. And you look at him the same way, too, when you think nobody's watching." Out of the mouths of babes, Julie smoothed Emily's hair back from her forehead. "Your papa and I barely know each other, Emily. Marriage is something that happens when two grown-ups love each other very much and want to be together forever." Emily considered this seriously. "Don't you want to be together forever? Don't you love us?" The question hit Julie like a physical blow. Did she love them? This brave, lonely little girl who had claimed her as family from the first moment? This gentle, strong man who had stood between her and danger without hesitation? "Yes," Julie whispered, the admission surprising her with its certainty. "Yes, I do love you both." Emily smiled sleepily. "Then the other stuff will work itself out. Mama used to say that love always finds a way." The next morning brought the monthly trip to town for supplies. Julie had been dreading it, worried that someone might recognize her or that word of Marcus's visit had spread. But James insisted she come along. "You're part of this family now," he said simply. "We stick together." The general store was crowded with ranchers' wives doing their monthly shopping. Julie helped Emily pick out ribbons for her hair, while James loaded sacks of flour and sugar. She was examining a bolt of blue fabric when she became aware that several women had gathered nearby, their voices carrying clearly. "That's her, the one staying out at the McAllister place," one woman whispered. "Heard tell a man came looking for her. Some kind of trouble from back east. James McAllister's a good man. Hope he knows what he's getting into. That little girl's been happier than I've seen her since Mary died, though." Julie's face burned with shame, but then she felt a small hand slip into hers. Emily stood beside her, chin raised defiantly as she stared at the gossiping women. "Miss Julie makes the best biscuits in Wyoming," Emily announced loudly enough for the whole store to hear. "And she reads me stories every night and braids my hair pretty. Papa says she's the answer to our prayers." Several of the women looked embarrassed at being overheard, but one older lady, Mrs. Patterson from the neighboring ranch, stepped forward with a kind smile. "Emily's right about those biscuits," she said warmly. "Brought some to the church social last week, didn't you? Best I've tasted in years." She turned to Julie. "You're welcome in our community, dear. Don't mind the chatter. Folks just like having something new to discuss." On the ride home, Emily sat between James and Julie on the wagon seat, chattering about the ribbons and the peppermint sticks James had bought her. But Julie noticed how James kept glancing at her, his expression thoughtful. "You all right?" he asked quietly when Emily's attention was caught by a hawk circling overhead. "People are talking," Julie said. "People always talk. Question is, do you care what they say?" Julie considered this. A week ago, she would have cared desperately, would have been mortified by the gossip and speculation. But now, with Emily's warm weight pressed against her side and James's steady presence beside her, she found she didn't care nearly as much as she should. "Not as much as I thought I would," she admitted. James smiled, the first truly relaxed smile she'd seen from him. "Good. Because Emily's right, you know. You are the answer to our prayers. Both of them." That night, as Julie lay in her bed listening to Emily's soft breathing and James's quiet movements as he checked the doors and windows, she realized something had changed. She was no longer thinking about this as a temporary job or a place to hide from her past. She was thinking about his home, The realization should have scared her. Instead, it felt like coming alive after a long, cold winter. Julie's fever broke on the third day, but it took another week for her strength to fully return. During those long days and nights, James had barely left her bedside except when Emily insisted on taking her turn as nurse. The 7-year-old had surprised them both with her gentle care, bringing cool cloths, reading her favorite stories aloud, and whispering prayers over Julie's sleeping form. Now, watching Julie laugh as Emily showed her the wildflowers they'd picked together, James felt something shift permanently in his chest. This wasn't gratitude anymore, or even the comfortable arrangement they'd fallen into. This was love, deep, lasting, and undeniable. "Emily," he said that evening after Julie had retired early, still recovering, "can you come sit with Papa?" His daughter climbed onto his lap in the big chair by the fireplace, her small hands automatically straightening his collar the way Julie had taught her. "Is Julie still sick, Papa?" "No, sweetheart. She's getting stronger every day." James took a deep breath. "But I need to ask you something important. When I hired Julie, you said she was going to be your mama. Do you still feel that way?" Emily's eyes went wide. "Oh yes, Papa. She reads to me every night, and she knows how to braid hair, and she lets me help cook, and she never gets mad when I ask too many questions." She paused, studying his face with those sharp blue eyes. "Do you love her too, Papa?" The simple question from his wise little daughter made James's heart race. "Yes, Emily, I do love her." "Good." Emily clapped her hands. "I picked her for both of us, remember? So when are you going to ask her to marry us?" James chuckled at her phrasing. "Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Would it be all right with you if I asked Julie to be my wife? To be your mama forever?" "Papa." Emily threw her arms around his neck. "I've been waiting forever for you to figure that out. Julie loves us too, I can tell. She gets that special smile when she looks at you, and she always touches your hand when she passes your coffee." The next morning, James found Julie in the kitchen, kneading bread while humming softly. The sight of her in his home, content and beautiful in the morning light, nearly took his breath away. "Julie," he said quietly. She turned, flour dusting her hands, and smiled that special smile Emily had noticed. "Good morning, James. Did you sleep well?" Instead of answering, he crossed the room and took her floury hands in his. "Julie, I need to tell you something." Her cheeks flushed pink. "James, please let me say this first." He took a shaky breath. "When Emily picked you to be our cook, she had bigger plans than I realized. But she was right. You've brought something to this house that's been missing for 2 years. Not just good food, but joy, laughter, life." Julie's eyes filled with tears. "James, I love you, Julie. Not just as Emily's choice for a mama. Not just as someone who takes care of us, but as the woman I want to spend my life with." He squeezed her hands gently. "I know this isn't conventional, and I know you came here running from one man's demands. I don't want to trap you into anything. But if you could find it in your heart to love us back—" "I already do," she whispered, tears spilling over. "I have for weeks now. I love you both so much it scares me." Before James could respond, small arms wrapped around both their waists. Emily had crept downstairs and was squeezing them together. "Does this mean you're going to marry us, Julie?" Emily asked, looking up with hopeful eyes. Julie knelt down to Emily's level, still holding James's hand. "Emily, sweetheart, would you like me to be your mama forever? Really and truly, more than anything in the whole world?" Emily threw herself into Julie's arms. "I told Jesus I needed a mama who would stay, and he sent you." James knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around both his girls. "Is that a yes, then?" Julie looked between them. The strong, gentle man who'd protected her and given her a home, and the precious little girl who'd claimed her from the first day. Her heart felt so full she thought it might burst. "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. I'll be your wife, James, and Emily's mama forever." Emily hooped with joy, dancing around the kitchen. "We're going to be a real family. Can we have a wedding soon?" Papa, I want everyone to know Julie's our mama. Today I get my mama forever, Emily whispered that night as Julie tucked her into bed. Forever and always, sweetheart, Julie promised, sealing it with a kiss. Emily woke before dawn on wedding morning, her heart racing with excitement. Today was the day she'd been dreaming of since she first saw Julie in town. The day her carefully chosen mama would officially become part of their family forever. She tiptoed to Julie's room and peeked inside. Julie was already awake, sitting by the window in her nightgown, holding her wedding dress. Mama, Emily whispered, using the word that would be official in just a few hours. Julie turned with a radiant smile. Good morning, my sweet girl. Are you ready for our big day? Emily climbed onto the bed beside her. I've been ready since the day I picked you. Are you nervous? A little, Julie admitted, stroking Emily's hair. It's a big step becoming a real family. But we already are a real family, Emily said with 7-year-old certainty. The wedding just makes it so everyone else knows, too. By mid-morning, the whole town seemed to have gathered under the massive cottonwood tree behind the house. Mrs. Henderson had brought her best tablecloths. Doc Miller had picked wildflowers from his garden, and even the stern banker's wife was dabbing her eyes as she arranged chairs. Emily wore her finest blue dress with ribbons Julie had sewn into her hair. She carried a small basket of rose petals, practicing her important role as flower girl and official best woman, as James had dubbed her. You look beautiful, sweetheart, James said, straightening his best suit. His hand shook slightly as he adjusted his tie. Papa, are you nervous too? Emily asked, noticing his fidgeting. Very nervous, he admitted. What if I mess up my words? Emily patted his arm wisely. Just tell Julie you love her. That's what matters. When Julie appeared in the doorway wearing her simple white dress with wild roses in her hair, both James and Emily caught their breath. She was radiant, glowing with happiness and love. There's my mama, Emily whispered in wonder. Pastor Williams stood beneath the cottonwood tree, his worn Bible in hand. As the small congregation settled into quiet anticipation, Emily took her place between James and Julie, holding both their hands. Dearly beloved, Pastor Williams began, we gather today not just to witness the union of James and Julie, but to celebrate the formation of a family that God Himself has brought together through the faith of a little child. Emily beamed as he gestured to her. The vows were simple but heartfelt. James's voice was steady as he promised to love, honor, and cherish Julie all the days of his life. Julie's voice was clear and strong as she vowed to be his faithful wife and Emily's loving mother. But then Pastor Williams did something unexpected. He knelt down to Emily's level. Emily McAllister, he said solemnly, you brought these two souls together through your prayers and your believing heart. Do you promise to help them love each other always? I promise, Emily said seriously, then broke into a grin. And I promise to tell them when they're being silly. The congregation laughed warmly as James and Julie exchanged rings. When Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, Emily cheered before they even kissed. Now I have a mama who picked me back, she announced to everyone, throwing her rose petals high in the air. The celebration continued late into the evening. Mrs. Patterson had made a cake, the Miller boys played fiddle music, and everyone danced under the stars. Emily waltzed with her papa, then with her new mama, then insisted all three dance together. This is the best day ever, she declared as Julie tucked her into bed that night. Now officially Emily McAllister. The best day so far, Julie corrected gently. We'll have many more wonderful days together. 3 months later, on Christmas morning, Emily crept downstairs before dawn, as usual. But this Christmas was different, magical in ways she'd never imagined. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Julie's special Christmas bread was rising in the kitchen, and Papa had somehow managed to find oranges for their stockings. But the most wonderful surprise was waiting by the Christmas tree. Mama, Papa, Emily called excitedly. James and Julie appeared, Julie's hand resting on her gently rounded belly. Emily had noticed the change weeks ago, but had been waiting patiently for them to share their news. "Emily," Julie said softly, settling beside her daughter on the floor, "your papa and I have a very special Christmas gift to tell you about." Emily's eyes sparkled with knowing excitement. "Is it a baby brother or sister?" James chuckled. "How did you? I prayed for that too," Emily said matter-of-factly. "After I prayed for Mama, I asked Jesus if maybe we could have a baby so I could be a big sister." Julie pulled Emily close. "Well, your prayers are being answered again. You're going to be the best big sister this baby could ask for." Emily threw her arms around Julie's neck. "Thank you, Mama. Thank you for coming to be our family." Later that morning, as they prepared Christmas dinner together, their first as an official family, Emily carefully set 4 places of the table, then paused and added a 5th small plate. "That's for baby," she explained to Julie's questioning look. "And there's always a place for Jesus, since he's the one who made our family happen." As they sat down to their feast, James reached for Julie's hand and Emily's, bowing his head in gratitude. "Lord," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "thank you for this precious family. Thank you for a daughter wise enough to know what we needed, and for bringing Julie to us when we needed her most. And thank you for the baby," Emily added quickly, "and for making Mama love us back." Julie squeezed both their hands, her heart overflowing. A year ago, she'd been running scared from a life she didn't want. Now she sat surrounded by more love than she'd ever dreamed possible. Outside, snow began to fall softly on their little ranch, blanketing their world in peaceful white. Inside, the McAllister family, complete at last, celebrated the miracle of love that had brought them together. Emily looked around the table at her papa and mama, her hand resting gently on Julie's belly where her baby brother or sister was growing, and smiled with perfect contentment. "Next Christmas," she announced happily, "we'll need 5 chairs, me, Papa, Mama, the baby, and Jesus who made it all happen." And in that moment, surrounded by the family she'd prayed for and chosen with a 7-year-old's perfect faith, Emily McAllister knew that sometimes the best plans come from the smallest hearts with the biggest dreams.